Alexander Hunt moved through the glass corridors of Hunt Technologies like a man carved from stone. His footsteps were precise, measured, each one landing with the authority of someone who owned everything his shadow touched. The building itself seemed to respond to his presence. Employees straightened when he passed. Conversations dropped to whispers. Even the air felt thinner, colder, as though his mood had learned to alter the climate around him. He wore a charcoal suit that fit perfectly across his shoulders, a white shirt without a single crease, and a watch that cost more than most people's yearly salary. Everything about him spoke of control, power, and something else. Absence. The absence of warmth, of spontaneity, of anything resembling joy. No one could remember the last time Alexander Hunt had smiled. Not at meetings, not at celebrations, not even when the company hit record profits. 5 years had passed since anyone had seen his expression shift beyond professional neutrality or cold displeasure. 5 years since the accident that had taken his wife and left him with nothing but an empire and a heart that had learned to stop feeling. His previous assistants had lasted weeks at most, 12 in total, each one leaving with the same haunted look, the same whispered complaints. He's impossible. He doesn't see you as human. He expects perfection and gives nothing back. One assistant had compared working for him to standing in a room where all the oxygen had been slowly removed. When Maya Santos walked into the building for her interview, the receptionist looked at her with something close to pity. She was young, perhaps too young, with dark hair pulled into a neat bun and eyes that carried a brightness that seemed out of place in the cold marble lobby. She wore a simple navy dress and carried a worn leather portfolio that had clearly seen better days. The interview lasted exactly 7 minutes. Alexander did not look up from his desk for 6 of them. When he finally raised his eyes, his gaze was sharp, assessing, empty of warmth. "You're younger than I expected," he said. His voice was smooth, controlled, the kind of voice that never needed to rise to command attention. "I'm qualified," Maya replied. No apology, no nervousness, just fact. He studied her for a moment longer. "You'll start Monday, 8 a.m. Not 8:01, 8. That was all. Maya arrived Monday at 7:45. Alexander was already at his desk, reviewing reports with the focused intensity of someone who never truly rested. She set down her bag, organized her workspace with quiet efficiency, and began sorting through the chaos of emails and scheduling conflicts his previous assistant had left behind. She did not ask him how he liked his coffee. She watched him drink it black, once, and remembered. She did not interrupt him with questions every 5 minutes. She learned his patterns, observed, adapted. By the end of the first day, his calendar was organized. By the end of the first week, she had anticipated 3 problems before they became emergencies. By the end of the second week, Alexander realized something unusual. He had not needed to correct her once, but what unsettled him most was not her competence. It was something else entirely. Maya seemed unfazed by his coldness. She did not flinch when he spoke sharply. She did not try to please him with nervous smiles or excessive politeness. She simply existed beside his darkness without being consumed by it. One evening, long after most employees had left, Alexander remained at his desk. The building was silent except for the hum of air conditioning and the distant sound of a vacuum cleaner somewhere on a lower floor. He looked up and noticed Maya still at her desk outside his office, working through a stack of contracts with the same focused calm she brought to everything. "You should go home," he said. She glanced at the clock. "So should you." It was not defiance exactly, it was observation stated plainly, without judgment. Alexander felt something flicker in his chest, irritation perhaps, or surprise. He was not certain which. "I have work to finish," he said. "So do I." He stood and walked to the doorway of his office. "Why are you still here?" Maya set down her pen and looked at him directly. Her eyes were steady, honest. "Because the work matters, and because you're here." There was no manipulation in her voice, no hidden motive, just simple truth. Alexander felt that flicker again, stronger now, like a match struck in a dark room. He returned to his desk without responding, but something had shifted, barely perceptible, like the first crack in ice that had frozen solid for years. The weeks passed. Maya learned things about Alexander that no one else seemed to notice. She learned that he rubbed his left temple when a headache was forming, that he avoided meetings on Thursday afternoons without ever explaining why, that he kept a small photograph in his desk drawer, face down, that he never looked at but never threw away. She also learned that beneath the coldness, beneath the sharp efficiency and rigid control, there was something fragile, something that had been broken so completely that he had simply stopped trying to repair it. One morning, Maya arrived to find Alexander standing at the floor-to-ceiling windows of his office, staring out at the city below. His posture was different, less controlled. His shoulders were slightly hunched, his hands pressed against the glass as though he needed something solid to hold him upright. She set down the coffee she had brought him and waited. She did not ask if he was all right. She did not offer empty reassurances. She simply stood there, a quiet presence, giving him space to exist without performance. "Today is the anniversary," he said finally. His voice was rougher than usual, stripped of its professional polish. 5 years. Maya understood immediately. The accident, his wife, the moment everything had stopped. "I'm sorry," she said. Not because she thought it would help, but because it was true. Alexander turned to look at her, and for the first time she saw something raw in his expression. Something beneath the armor. "Everyone says that. No one means it." "I mean it," Maya replied. He studied her face, searching for dishonesty, for pity, for the performative sympathy people offered when they did not know what else to do. But he found none of those things. He found only sincerity, steady and unshakable. Something in him cracked then, not loudly, not visibly, but deep inside where he had learned to keep everything locked away. The following week, Maya did something unexpected. She placed a small potted plant on the corner of Alexander's desk, a succulent, small and green and stubborn-looking. He stared at it. "What is this?" "A plant," she said simply. "Ben, I can see that. Why is it on my desk?" "Because everything in here is glass and steel and nothing is alive." She said it without judgment, just observation. "I thought you might like something that grows." Alexander wanted to tell her to remove it, wanted to maintain the sterile perfection of his environment, but something stopped him. He looked at the small green leaves, at the way they caught the light, and felt that strange flicker again. "Fine," he said, "but you're responsible for keeping it alive." Maya smiled, not triumphantly, not broadly, just a small, knowing curve of her lips. "Deal." The plant stayed. Days passed, then weeks. Alexander found himself glancing at it occasionally, noting when Maya watered it, when new growth appeared. It was absurd, really, to care about a plant, but it was there, green and persistent, refusing to disappear. Other small changes followed. Maya began leaving her office door open when she worked late, and music would drift quietly into the hallways. Nothing loud or intrusive, just soft piano melodies that made the silence feel less heavy. Alexander never asked her to stop. She started bringing 2 coffees instead of 1, setting the second cup on the small table near the window where natural light pooled in the afternoons. The first time she did this, Alexander ignored it. The second time, he found himself sitting there briefly, cup in hand, looking out at the city in daylight rather than working through sunset without pause. One afternoon, Alexander made an error, a significant one. He had mixed up 2 client names in an important email, something that could have cost the company a major contract. He caught it only because Maya had quietly flagged it before it sent. Her note, simple and factual. "Wrong client name. Attaching correct version." He sat very still, staring at the screen. When was the last time he had made a mistake? When was the last time someone had corrected him without making him feel like a failure? He walked to her desk. She looked up, calm and expectant. "Thank you," he said. The words felt foreign in his mouth, rusty from disuse. Maya nodded. "Once, of course." That night, Alexander stayed late again, but this time, when Maya appeared in his doorway at 9 p.m. with her bag over her shoulder, she did not simply say goodnight. "There's a small cafe 3 blocks from here," she said. "They make excellent soup, and it's warmer than this office." It was not quite an invitation, not quite a suggestion, just information, offered plainly. Alexander looked at her, at the gentle expectation in her eyes, at the way she seemed to believe, against all evidence, that he was still capable of doing something as simple as eating soup in a cafe. "I have work," he said, but the words lacked conviction. "The work will be here tomorrow," Maya replied, "but the soup won't." He almost said no, almost returned to his reports and his emails and his carefully constructed isolation. But something stopped him. The same something that had been growing quietly, persistently, like the small green plant on his desk. "Fine," he said, "but only for 20 minutes." They walked through the cool evening air, side by side, not speaking. The cafe was small and warm, filled with the smell of bread and herbs and humanity. They sat at a corner table. The soup arrived, thick and rich, steam rising in lazy curls. Alexander took a bite. It was good, genuinely good. He could not remember the last time he had tasted anything fully, had allowed himself to experience something as simple as flavor without thinking about quarterly reports or shareholder meetings. Maya ate her own soup quietly, not watching him, not waiting for gratitude or revelation, just existing comfortably in the moment. "Why do you stay?" Alexander asked suddenly. "Every other assistant left within weeks. You've been here months." Maya set down her spoon and considered the question with the same thoughtfulness she brought to everything. "Because I don't think you're actually as cold as you pretend to be," she said. "I think you're just hurt, and hurt people need someone who won't run away." The words landed like stones in still water, rippling outward, touching places Alexander had forgotten existed. His throat tightened, his chest ached with something he could not name. "I haven't smiled in 5 years," he said, and it sounded like a confession. "I know," Maya replied, "but that doesn't mean you won't smile again." They finished their soup in comfortable silence. When they stood to leave, Alexander held the door for her, a small gesture, automatic, human. And as they walked back to the building, something impossible happened. Maya said something about the moon, how it looked particularly bright tonight, and Alexander glanced up. The light was indeed striking, cold and clear and beautiful. And before he could stop himself, before he could think or control or guard himself, the corner of his mouth lifted. Not a full smile, not yet, but something, a beginning. Maya saw it. She did not gasp or point it out or make it into something bigger than it was. She simply smiled back, warm and steady, and kept walking. That night, Alexander sat at his desk long after Maya had gone home. He looked at the small plant on the corner, at the way its leaves had grown fuller in the weeks since she had placed it there. He thought about soup and music, and the quiet persistence of kindness. He opened his desk drawer, and for the first time in 5 years, he turned over the photograph. His wife looked back at him, frozen in time, her smile bright and real. The pain came, sharp and immediate, but beneath it was something else. Memory, love, proof that he had once been capable of feeling. He closed the drawer gently, not hiding the photo this time, just setting it aside. Tomorrow, he decided, he would thank Maya properly. Tomorrow, he would try to remember what it felt like to be human. The following weeks brought more small changes. Alexander began arriving at 8:15 instead of 7 a.m. He attended a company celebration and stayed for more than 5 minutes. He learned the names of employees he had never bothered to notice before. He asked Maya about her weekend, not out of obligation, but because he genuinely wanted to know. And slowly, carefully, like a muscle that had atrophied from disuse, his face began to remember expressions beyond neutrality, a raised eyebrow, here, a thoughtful nod, there, small cracks in the stone. One morning, 3 months after Maya had started, Alexander walked into the office carrying 2 coffees. He placed one on Maya's desk without a word, the same way she had done for him countless times. She looked up, surprised, and something warm flooded her expression. "Thank you." "You're welcome," he said, and this time, the words felt natural. That afternoon, a junior employee made a presentation that was genuinely innovative, creative, impressive. Alexander listened, and when the young man finished, uncertain and hopeful, Alexander nodded. "Excellent work," he said. And then, without thinking, without guarding himself, he smiled. It was small, brief, but unmistakable, real. The room went silent. Employees exchanged shocked glances. Someone later swore they had witnessed a miracle, but Maya, standing quietly at the back of the conference room, simply smiled too. Not with surprise, but with quiet recognition. She had known all along. Known that beneath the ice, beneath the armor, beneath 5 years of grief and isolation, Alexander Hunt was still there, still capable of warmth, still capable of healing. After the meeting, Alexander found Maya in her office. She was organizing files, her movements efficient and calm as always. "I smiled today," he said. The words sounded strange, vulnerable, like admitting to something impossible. Maya looked at him, her eyes gentle. "I noticed. I didn't think I could anymore. But you did." He stood there for a moment, and she saw something in his expression she had never seen before. Not just warmth, but gratitude, deep, honest, unguarded gratitude. "Thank you," he said, "for not giving up on me." Maya set down her papers and met his gaze fully. "You just needed someone to stay," she said simply. "So I stayed." The sun was setting through the office windows, casting long golden light across the floor. The small plant on Alexander's desk had grown new leaves. The building, once cold and silent, now hummed with something warmer. Not perfection, not happiness exactly, but possibility. Alexander Hunt had learned to smile again, not because someone had fixed him or forced him or manipulated him into healing, but because someone had simply shown up day after day with quiet kindness and unshakable patience. Someone who had believed that beneath the coldness was still a human being worth reaching. And in learning to smile again, Alexander had learned something even more important. He had learned that healing does not happen in grand gestures or dramatic moments. It happens in small acts of care repeated over time, in coffee placed on desks, in plants that grow, in 20 minutes of soup eaten in comfortable silence. He had learned that the opposite of grief is not the absence of pain. It is the presence of someone who stays beside you while you remember how to live. And Maya Santos, with her steady eyes and persistent kindness, had stayed. She had not run when he was cold. She had not demanded he be anything other than what he was. She had simply existed beside his darkness until, gradually, light found its way back in. 5 years of silence had ended, not with thunder but with a smile. Small, hesitant, real. And it was enough. It was everything.